Hi guys, this is Max here with another one of my award-winning videos. And today we are going to take a little look at which Republican and Democrat governors are the most likely to get primaried out by members of their own party. Now, let's get straight to it, shall we? For the Republicans, I believe a top primary challenge target will be the governor of Idaho. He has his own lieutenant governor running against him, and he's overall not very much approved of by Republican voters. I think you can count on him getting out. Oops, that's the Senate map. Let's go for the gubernatorial map, which is here. Just as I said, the governor of Idaho, he's probably going to lose his job before he even gets to run in the general election. There's another Republican who's very much at risk of losing a primary, and that guy is, no, not Brian Kemp. We're going to talk about him in a moment. But whom I am talking about is Ohio, Mike DeWine. The Republican governor there has really held a lot of statewide elected positions. He was a senator, he was a state treasurer, he was secretary of state, he was basically everything, and right now he's governor. He definitely represents the old Republican Party, and the Trump Party is more and more drifting away from where Republicans were back in the 90s when DeWine got elected to the Senate. And I do not think that Mike DeWine will win another primary. I think he's going to get primaried out, but I still think that this race is going to go Republican in the general election nevertheless. Georgia is another case, though, because here the Republicans are kind of in a lose-lose situation. If Georgia Governor Brian Kemp does not get primaried out and runs in the general election, I have a hard time believing that the hardcore Trump base will be willing to turn out for him. But at the same time, if the Republicans in Georgia do primary Kemp out and run a more conservative candidate, that guy would have more issues appealing to moderate suburban voters, which are the largest voting bloc in Georgia, or at least they're the most important one. Nevertheless, I should say, he is very much at risk of losing a primary. However, unlike with the other two guys, I don't think that Brian Kemp will lose a primary as of right now. I think he'll get around 60% of the primary vote. That is because he did pass election reform laws in Georgia. Many people labeled these laws as racist and trying to suppress the vote. I wouldn't necessarily say that. If you look at the specific provisions in the Georgia bill, those are the ones that you basically can find in most states of the country. Connecticut has also pretty strict voter ID laws, and in New York City, you're also not allowed to pass food and water or other gifts to people waiting in line to vote. But that's a topic for another time. Those three Republican governors are the ones who are at the largest, at the highest risk of getting primaried out. You could say to an extent Charlie Baker is at risk because Trump is actually trying to go for that state for whatever reason. I don't think that any other Republican who's not a liberal Rockefeller-type Republican will be able to win in the state of Massachusetts, but you never know. It's certainly a possibility. For the Democrats, I don't really think that there are any governors who are at risk of actually losing their jobs. Until a few weeks ago, I would have said definitely Andrew Cuomo. But if there was any Democrat governor who has a chance of getting primaried out, it would probably be Ned Lamont in Connecticut. Grisham Lujan, no, not Lujan. The governor of New Mexico, what's her name again? Her name is Michelle Lujan Grisham, yeah. Which is interesting because one of the New Mexico senators is also named Lujan. Anyway, there was a pretty big sex scandal about her. She might lose a primary. But other than that, I do not think that there are any Democrats who are going to lose. Gavin Newsom isn't going to lose. He was just confirmed by California voters, and that recall election gave him something to rely on when it came to legitimizing his candidacy. Anyway, for the next time, that is. Now let's take a little look at the Senate elections. By the way, I don't really think that Grisham and Lamont are going to lose their primaries, but of all the Democratic governors, they're the least popular ones, and they're therefore the most likely to lose a primary. Now, in the Senate, I think it is a bit more different. We got a few Republican retirements. We have not a single Democrat retirement so far. But out of the incumbent Republican senators, there might be a couple of them who are not guaranteed to lose a primary, but who are at least aimed at by the Trump base and by Republicans in general. And from all those Republicans who might lose a primary, I think Lisa Murkowski is the top tier. She might have a chance to survive the general election because Alaska does ranked choice voting, where you, as a Democrat, you could vote for the Democrat and put Lisa Murkowski as your second choice. That is possible, but it is not guaranteed that Murkowski is going to win, and there are a lot of people who really hate her, so I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a done deal for her. Other than that, there are, I believe, the Republican senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. He might lose a primary. There were some culture war issues where he disagreed with the Trump base, with the base of the Republican Party. But to be completely honest, I don't think it's going to be enough to kick him out of the job. I mean, he's still a conservative senator. I don't think Kennedy's going to lose a primary in Louisiana, sorry. In Arkansas, it's also not very likely to happen. Alabama, there, Richard Shelby is retiring, and yeah, I think that's actually it in terms of Republican primary challenges that could actually succeed. There's one in Iowa, but if you're not a senator that openly goes against the Republican Party and tries to fully dismantle Donald Trump and basically is a Republican in name only, you could say. To make it short, if you're not Lisa Murkowski, who opposes Republican ideals very often all across the board, then you're not at risk of actually losing a primary when you're a senator. I know I did fill in Oklahoma for James Lankford, but I said that's unlikely. Anyway, what is important to keep in mind, Lisa Murkowski is the only Republican in the Senate that might really lose a primary, and that is really unpopular. So keep an eye on that state. What is a different case, though, is for the Democrats. I have a really hard time thinking about any Democrat who could get primaried out. But I want to give you at least a few potential names, even though it's very unlikely. And really the only one I could think of is Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto. And the reason why I go with Nevada is that the Nevada Democrat Party actually elected a very far left socialist Democratic chair. I'm not saying Democratic Socialist because that woman doesn't really have too many democratic principles. I saw a speech of her. They elected a socialist as their party chair. And there are a couple of primary challengers for Catherine Cortez Masto. So there is a slim chance she might actually lose a primary, even though I have a hard time believing that's going to happen in a swing state like Nevada. I do not think, though, that there's any other Democrat going to lose their primary. Nope, really there isn't. And there's also not any other Republican whom I'd see greatly at risk. So now that's it. There were my top candidates for losing their primary in 2022 during the midterm elections. And keep those 3 states in mind, 2 governors, 1 senator, that are the most likely to actually lose a primary. Actually, 4. 3 governors, 1 senator. In Idaho, Ohio, Georgia, Kemp, DeWine, and the Idaho governor, his name is Brad Little. Okay? Little, DeWine, Kemp, the most likely governors to get primaried out, and Lisa Murkowski, the senator, the most likely to get primaried out. Those are the people who I think have a pretty reasonable chance to get primaried out. In some cases, even a more than 50% chance to get primaried out. And that's what I want you to keep in mind. Now, if you like this video, likes, comments, and subscriptions are greatly appreciated. And I'm very glad to announce that I am looking forward towards doing an alternate history video, which will include lots of interesting details and also altered elections reaching from the 90s all the way to the present. Stay tuned for it, and until next time, Max out. I love you guys.